Hi, welcome to my podcast, Real Conversations with Patty, where I bring on special guests that I admire because of the perseverance and dedication to break barriers and show every little girl and boy que si se puede. Today's special guest is a person who was kind enough to ask me to be part of my podcast. I am honored that she is here because I'm positive her experience going through college and navigating life as a first gen will help out many people. I have the honor to introduce my special guest, Elizabeth Gama. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, Patty.
How are you?
I'm good this morning. I'm actually on my second cup of coffee. Don't judge me. And I'm
No
currently
judgment.
babysitting a bunch of dogs.
How was your childhood like?
So my childhood was a little complicated. So I did grow up with Mexican parents. So my dad is from Michoacan and my mom is from Nayarit. They both came to the United States. They met each other in Kerman, California, and they were very young when they met. My mom was 14 years old and my dad was 19. My mom didn't come from the best childhood. And so she met my dad, they fell in love, and she had me at 15 years old. Because of that, and because they were so young, I felt like my whole childhood, it was kind of like growing up with a sister almost when it came to my mom. That was a lot of growing pains. And apart from that, my parents' relationship was not like the greatest either. So there was a lot of like DV in the home. There was a lot of like uncertainty. I've always said my dad is an amazing father, but he was not the greatest of husbands. But other than that, like besides their relationship, like my childhood is also filled with a lot of like amazing memories. Like I remember like trips to Disneyland. I remember like amusement parks. I remember like so many, like spending Sundays with my dad playing soccer, because I grew up like playing soccer. Me and my dad just having like those bonding moments of going out to the soccer field and just playing sports. So they're filled with like a lot of good memories. It's just like when it comes to their relationship, it's like not the greatest. Overall, like I couldn't have asked for a better childhood. And it's really interesting because as I got older and as I got into this field, I thought I had like a very normal childhood. Like if you would have asked me this question like maybe 5 years ago, I would have said, oh, I had a fantastic childhood. I went to Disneyland. I always had shoes. I always had food. I didn't really like everything that I asked for, I normally got. And it wasn't until I started going to therapy that my therapist was like, you think that's normal, Liz? And I'm like, oh, might not be as normal as I thought. That's something that I've had to kind of like heal from as an adult and really like reflect on. And I'm like, oh, okay, they aren't like normal things. But other than that, like I'm very thankful for my parents. My dad has been doing roofing for, I don't know, as long as I can remember. And he wakes up super early and, he comes home really late. My mom, she's been working at the county for a while. And so they have like stable jobs. And I've got to see like really like what hardworking parents from Mexico can do.
What would you say was the moment or life experience that shaped you who you are now?
So I think there's like two significant moments that I can think of. One thing was I went to school for criminology initially. So I got my bachelor's in criminology and I really wanted to do like probation. It's like what I wanted to do, probation or drug enforcement. I graduated from school from Fresno State and then I moved to San Francisco because I was having a hard time getting a job like here in Fresno, and I ended up getting a job in San Francisco. And I was working ironically for immigration as a case manager. While I was there, I got to kind of see a lot of the bad side of when it comes to immigration and the policies and a lot of like politics that go into immigration. And so when I was there, I really wanted to help people, and I would always me regañaban because they'd be like, oh, you're doing too much, you're providing them, because we weren't allowed to do like provide any type of like social work kind of stuff. Like our job was just to kind of check them in and make sure that they didn't go off the radar while they were like in the United States waiting for their court hearing to see if they could get asylum. And so I was 6 months in. I didn't really like it. I didn't really care for it. And then they let me go because so they have a really extensive background check. And in my background, me preguntaron about my mom's parents and my dad's parents. And they asked me like, hey, because they ask you if you associate with any illegal immigrants, right? So I was being honest. And so, I said, my parents are from Mexico, but now they have their green card. I said, but technically my grandparents, they're not like citizens. They don't have a green card. They don't have anything like that. And so they actually ended up letting me go because of that, because of my mom's parents, because my dad's parents did have a green card and my mom's parents did not have a green card. I was so sad. Not because I enjoyed the job, but it was because I had gone to school for criminology and I wanted to just work in the field, and I kept se me estaban cerrando las puertas like everywhere, right? Like I had already applied for probation. They're like, you don't have enough experience. go do
Mhm.
something else, go do like corrections. And so se me cerraron todas las puertas. I was like
Mhm.
super, super sad. And so I moved back to Fresno. And then when I was here in Fresno, it's like I was trying to figure out like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to do criminology? Like,
Yeah.
I really enjoy helping people. And it kind of essentially is what led me to the path of becoming a counselor. And so I think that was like one big moment as far as
Mhm.
like how it led me to this career. Second moment that I can think of was in high school. My dad always told me like you can go to college, you can accomplish everything, but nobody ever like explained to me like what that consists of. You know how there's like specific classes you have to take and
Yes, the requirements and everything.
yeah. And so nobody told me that. Like my dad was just like, go to college, go to college. I had no idea like what that consisted of. None of my
Mhm.
family members had gone to college. And
Mhm.
so I ended up meeting one of my best friends who I'm still best friends with now, the person that I'm babysitting the dog for. She thankfully had an older brother who was 2 years older, who
Mhm.
was a senior, and we were sophomores when I met her. He was on his way to Fresno State and he was like super excited. And because of him, he kind of like planted, like, okay, like there's certain classes you have to take and there's certain things you have to do. So me and my best friend, we went to the counselor's office and we're like, what do we have to do to get into Fresno State? The counselor
Mhm.
was like, this is all the things you have to do. You have to maintain a good grade point average and blah, blah, blah. And if you guys can do that, then by the time you guys are, seniors, you guys can apply and hopefully get in. I'm really thankful to the counselor who believed in me
Mhm.
because my grades were not good my freshman year. And he was like, you can make all of these up in summer school, you can replace the grades. And then I'm really thankful for my best friend and her brother because if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure anybody would have actually told me like how to get there.
I don't know what religion you are, but I'm Catholic. I feel aunque se cierre una puerta, abre la otra, and it's when you least expect it.
It's weird how life works sometimes, but I think those are like two very significant moments for me as
Yeah.
far as like what's led me to where I'm at now.
What was your dream as a child?
So I wanted to be a scientist when I was small. Like
Okay.
I really liked like watching like Bill Nye and stuff. And then I realized that I was horrible at math and that it was probably not gonna happen because to be like a scientist you have to do like a lot of math. And so at one point it did shift into me wanting to do drug enforcement. So I really got stuck on this idea that I wanted to do drug enforcement. I wanted to, clean up the streets from drugs and I think I started thinking about this around 6th grade.
Okay.
And up until probably my junior year of my undergrad, I still wanted to do that. Like I was still like super passionate about wanting to do that. And it started to change when I started thinking about possibly having like a family. Like I was like, oh, what if I want to have like babies one day? And when you're in DEA, it's a lot of like undercover work and it's a lot of relocating to like different states to do depending on like what you need to do. Like when I really started getting into it, I was like, okay, this might not be the job for me. It's a lot of undercover work, a lot of moving, and it's dangerous work, obviously. So I just was like, I don't know if that's something that I would want to bring to a family.
You have your master's and credential in clinical counseling. Could you explain what this degree is for anyone who's interested in pursuing it?
It's a licensed professional clinical counselor. LPCCs are actually kind of new to California. There's like 3 different ways you can do. You can do school counseling, you can do marriage and family therapy, and then you could do the professional clinical counseling. So the difference between us and just a marriage and family therapist is that we have an employment component to us. So we could go, for example, work at like the Department of Rehabilitation. We can help people with like the employment component and the rehabilitation component with that. So that's kind of the difference between us. But other than that, we can also do family therapy, we can do couples therapy, we do children's therapy. The only thing we can't do is do therapy at schools because we don't have the PPS credential that you need. You need a master's degree. So you have to get a master's degree an accredited school. So if just for example, if someone's looking into it, I would suggest to go to the BBS website, which is the Board of Behavioral Sciences. And they have a long list of schools that are accredited because the first thing is picking a school that's accredited because if you go to one that's not, then it won't count. And then Fresno State is one of those schools. So I decided to go there. And then you do the 2 years. It's 2 to 4 years depending on if you're going full-time or part-time. And then you do a practicum, which is like volunteer experience that you have to do. So I had to go do my practicum at like a clinic where I was doing individual therapy with adults and children. Practicum is 300 hours and then internship is 600 hours, which is also volunteer hours. So you're looking at about a year and a half of like volunteer work. And this is just like in the master's program. Once you graduate from the master's program, you have to take like the exit exam, at least at Fresno State. I'm not sure colleges have it, but you take the exit exam and then you graduate, and then you have to apply for an associate number, which is where I'm at right now in my stage. And with an associate number, you do get paid to accumulate your hours, but the total hours for associates is 3,000 before you get licensed.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
How far are you along?
I am at like 1,200 right now. It's quite a bit of volunteer hours, but it's definitely needed. When I first started doing individual therapy, I was like, what did I get myself into? But it's definitely like as you get more into it, it gets a lot easier and you really start to get, especially if you have like a really good supervisor, because you have to have someone supervising your hours that's licensed. And it can't
Okay.
be like a new person that's licensed. They have to be at least 3 to 4 years of licensed
Have
before
to
they.
have experience. Currently, you are working at Best Now as a program manager based on doing some research, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is it related to clinical counseling? If not, like, what do you do there?
I'm like in a weird limbo right now, I think, in my career. So before I decided to go into the master's program, when I had moved back to Fresno,
Hmm.
I took a job doing case management, working with homeless individuals and families. And so I was doing that, and I was like kind of uncertain as to what I wanted to do. And this was prior to applying for the master's program. And so I was getting experience. I started the master's program, and then I got promoted from the position I was in from case manager to a program coordinator, which is like in the middle of a case manager and a program manager. I was a program coordinator. I was close to finishing the master's program. I think I was probably about my last year. And I was like, you know what? My next career step is I really want to run a program. Like that is what I really want to do. I want to run a program. And so I started applying, and then I ended up getting hired at Best Now. And they took a chance on me because I didn't have the program manager experience like whatsoever, but I had a supervisor experience. They took me in, and then I got hired in September, and then I graduated the Fresno State program in December.
Oh,
So I
wow.
had just started with Best Now, and then I graduated, and then I got my associate number. My main thing is that I do want to just keep running the program because my final goal is that I want to open up my own practice. So I want to
Oh,
do
okay.
my own therapy practice, and I specifically want to work with the Hispanic population because I feel like there's like such a need for it, specifically here in the Central Valley. And I have like so many plans, so many things that I want to do. But in order to do that, I feel like I have to have that manager experience. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm doing my hours part time.
What does your day to day look like?
Currently, really, really busy because I'm working full time and I'm also doing my hours part time. So it just depends on the day. So there's normally like on Mondays, I work at Best Now the full day. So I'll wake up, I'll make my coffee. I try to squeeze in some self care in the morning. So I either go on a quick like mile run, or I'll do maybe like a meditation. Although meditations are a little hard for me to do. When I was younger, I got diagnosed with ADHD. I feel like my mind is always going 100 miles an hour, and so meditation sometimes is hard. But it's something that I've gotten into as I've gotten into the profession. They're like, it's really good for you to just kind of clear your mind. So I either go on a run, I'll meditate, I'll have my coffee, and then I'll log in to my computer, check emails, get the day started. At Best Now, we do peer support specialist training. I think I failed to kind of mention what we actually do at Best Now. So we do peer support specialist training, which is peer support specialists are very, very similar to counselors actually, but the difference is the schooling or the credentialing. So peer support specialists, they have to do an 80-hour training, and then they're able to do like peer counseling. And the difference between a peer support specialist is besides the training component where they don't have to go to school, but it's like kind of like a trade school kind of thing. Peer support specialists have what's called lived experience. So they have either at one point struggled with mental health themselves or have struggled with substance use or alcohol use. And they're generally already in the recovery process, but they provide like guidance to other people who are currently struggling through their recovery journey.
Oh, okay.
So it's really similar, but it's really different at the same time because one thing that like as I got into the field of counseling, there's a lot of stigma even within people that are in this field that we don't talk about like our own mental health because we're supposed to know everything, right? We're supposed to be the counselors. We're supposed to fix everybody. Best Now, I feel like gives me a really, really good balance because I'm allowed to like talk about my own struggles in this field, but also bring it back into the field that I'm working to get licensed in.
What have you learned about yourself in this journey of becoming a clinical counselor?
I think what I've learned the most about myself is all the things that I feel like I needed to work on that I didn't know I needed to work on prior to coming into this field. I got into the master's program. I think one of the things that I first learned about was like attachment theory. It was like this light bulb that went off in my head, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I think like the most important stuff that I've been learning is just like unlearning all the qualities that I may not like about myself. And I've been healing it, I feel like, through this program, through the program, and through acquiring my hours, like just through all the knowledge that I've been getting. So it's been challenging because I feel like it brought up like so many different emotions. Like I said, like when I talk about my childhood, I didn't used to think that it was as chaotic as it was. And I got into the program and then I started doing therapy myself. And then I'm like, whoa. And so it's been so much work, like in a good way.
How difficult is it getting a job relating to your degree?
So right now there is so much job growth in the field of counseling. And I think honestly, I think the pandemic really, really hit home for a lot of people. And a lot of people were struggling with their mental health during the pandemic. A lot of people were struggling with their drinking. A lot of people were struggling with substance use because we're so isolated. And I feel like, and then telehealth became a thing, right? So now we do a lot of things like through Zoom. So I feel like counseling became so readily available to so many people because of like Zoom and the pandemic. So there are so many like job opportunities. I sometimes open up Indeed because sometimes we help people in the peer support field look for peer support work. And I see so many like associate jobs, like where I'm at right now. And I see so many licensed positions too, like licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional clinical counselors, licensed marriage and family therapy. There's so much work out here. And I think that if you really have a passion for it, that you should definitely jump into it. I forget what the projected growth is, but it's pretty high, like as far as like how the next 10 years and what it's going to look like. So I would definitely recommend it. It is more schooling, it is tough at times, and it pays really well. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. It does, especially once you get licensed. I think the possibilities once you're licensed are also endless. Like you could work pretty much anywhere, like in any kind of population you want to work with, you can work with. And it gives you so much flexibility too. So I feel like I'll never really get tired of the job because I know I have that option of like, okay, if I don't want to do this anymore, I can go do this.
What does success mean to you?
Happiness. And as I've gotten older, that's become more important to me. Like happiness, just like in general, like happiness with my own mental health, like happiness in my relationship, happiness in my friendships, happiness with my family, and just having like a home. Like I'm such a simple person. Like I drive like a simple car and like and to me, just happiness is like just like the things that bring me light. And so that's what success means to me. As long as I'm doing something where I truly like enjoy it. Like I love going to work at Best Now. I love it. And then I also love doing my hours for this other, like, this is like my career passion as well, obviously, right? I love doing both of those things and they bring me so much happiness to my life. My dad used to always tell me, just do something you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. When I was an undergrad, I used to, I was working all these jobs, like, hated it. And I used to tell my dad, like, I don't know if I'm ever going to find a job that I actually enjoy doing. And now I understand it. Like, now I understand what and my dad loves roofing. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it, sir, waking up so early and los techos on the heat, but he like loves it and he's always so excited to go to work. And I really wanted to have that too. And I feel like I'm at a place now where I have found that too.
How do you stay motivated when life gets hard?
It's kind of cliche too, but that this too shall pass, I think is a big one. Every moment that I've gone through in my life, ha pasado. And that's one thing I think that my mom has always told me. It comes back to like, cuando se te cierra una puerta, se te abre otra. There's been some times where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And there's been times where I haven't made the best decisions on how to cope with like my feelings. I think in the end, like I always have to reflect, I can get through pretty much anything. Everything, like there's days where, yeah, it's hard, but I can get through anything. And I think what really, really solidified that for me was when COVID hit, my partner had got accepted to San Francisco. She was like, oh, well, actually it was before COVID. So she got accepted a little bit before COVID. And she was like, I'm going to move out there. And I was already in the master's program at Fresno State. And I was like, I want to move with you. So that's how I ended up getting the job at Best Now. I don't know if you noticed, but it's in the Bay Area. One of my things was like, I want to be here in the Bay Area to support you and your dreams, but I also want to be able to accomplish my dreams. So I was commuting twice a week to school. And I was being out of school at 9 p.m. and then I was still driving back to the Bay Area and then I was still going to work the next day. Thankfully, for me, COVID was like a blessing because it went everything online and I was able to finish the degree because of that. But I think that really solidified that I'm like, I can do anything that I put my mind to, like anything.
What do you love about your job?
What I really love about counseling is like seeing people self-reflect. As counselors, our job is
Mhm.
not to advise you guys, but we're supposed to provide you guys with the tools on how to accomplish certain things and educate you. It's like another component of it. So, like for example, I was telling you about like attachment theory earlier, right?
Mhm.
So I would like educate you on that, and then we would utilize that like to reflect on like how that affects your relationship. So what I love about counseling is just like planting like that little seed in your head about it,
Mhm.
and then watching you grow from it. Like I feel like that's like the most rewarding part of
Okay.
it. With adults,
Mhm.
with teens, with little kids, I'm still learning. It's a different kind of therapy. It's a lot of like
Yeah.
play therapy and things like
Mhm.
that. But yeah, I think that's the most rewarding part for me is like watching individuals like really really work hard to improve like the person that
Mhm.
they are. With Best Now, it's more of like a training thing because we do the
Mhm.
training. And I guess it kind of reflects back because I just like enjoy teaching people. So if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be like teaching people or doing counseling, I would have said you're crazy. But now I'm like here and I'm like, I literally love like educating people. And I think education is so important.
If you could start all over again, what would you do differently?
Honestly, I don't know if I'd do anything differently because I feel
Mhm.
switching careers from
Mhm.
criminology into counseling was like a really big shift for me. And obviously, I would have loved to have decided on counseling earlier and got started on that like right off the bat so that I didn't like, not like waste time, but so that I could be licensed by now. You know, I could probably be
Mhm.
done with my hours. But I feel like every experience that I've gotten, it has kind of led me to here and is what makes me a better friend, a better therapist, a better partner. Like, so I don't think I could take anything back.
Do you have a mentor?
So I have a
Yeah.
couple.
How important do you think is having a mentor?
I think it's really important whether you call it a mentor or if it's just like maybe a boss that you have. Like I lean a lot like on the supervisors that supervise me for my hours. They're
Mhm.
the ones that that sign off on my hours, but they're also the ones that teach me when I'm kind of stuck on certain client cases where I'm like,
Mhm.
this client brought this to me and I'm not really sure like what I should do with the
Mhm.
information or how I should or what kind of therapeutic process I can like add to it. So leaning on them. And another thing too is I practice like surrounding myself with women who are like really driven and who are like passionate about things that they do. Like,
Mhm.
all my friends are really passionate about the career choices. So I try to surround myself by like positive people. So I don't know if I necessarily call them like mentors. I think just having like a really, really good support system of like people who motivate you is really important.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to become a clinical counselor?
One, to find a school that's accredited would be like the first thing. So like if you're barely starting to look,
Mhm.
find an accredited school, look at all the requirements, and then figure out which of the four counseling you would like to do. So there's LMFT, LCSW, which is licensed clinical social worker, school counseling, and then LMFT, licensed and marriage family therapist. So
Okay.
which of these four would you prefer to do? And then once you actually get into the program, my biggest advice is self-care. You got to think we listen to people's problems and
Yeah.
stories all day, every day, like 8 hours a day. Like when I'm doing my hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, depending. And then we do notes. And so it can be like really mentally challenging. So you have to really take care of yourself. Like if you want to not experience any burnout or compassion fatigue, that'd be my
Yeah.
advice. Like look at the accreditation of schools and then really, really practice self-care once you get into the program.
From everything we talked about in this interview, could you give us some inspiration, motivation?
Another cliche thing, but never give up. I think like it's so like keep going, never give up. My biggest like quote that I try to live by every day is take it one day at a time. Like a lot of
Mhm.
times we can get easily overwhelmed like if we focus on the big picture, right? It's almost like, oh, if I get into this master's program, like voy a durar 2 años. I have all of these reasons why I should not do it, right? Like,
Mhm.
whatever it may be for anybody watching here, like it could be maybe you have kids or maybe you have other priorities or maybe you're working a full-time job or maybe you weren't that good in school when you were in school and you're like, I don't think I could do a master's program. My advice to you is just take it one day at a time. Put in that application, see if you get in. Once you get in, take it from there and just literally
Yeah.
take it one day at a time. And it's something that I've had to, before I used to be so focused, like what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. ¿Qué voy a hacer? And I started really practicing like living in the moment. Like what can I do today? My advice for anyone out there is don't focus on these big pictures and just focus on the little things. Accomplish the small goals and they'll get you to the really big goal that you want to accomplish.
Whose career inspires you that keeps you going and why?
I think my mom has been a very big motivation for me. My mom, since I can remember, she's worked. She was not a stay-at-home mom. Nothing against stay-at-home moms. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think that, but she's just always worked.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I would spend like a lot of time by myself when I would come home from school because nobody was home. Pero watching my mom like fregándose like
Mm-hmm.
day by day, like working, she would get home, she would still cook, she would still clean, she would still do like all these things. And watching her be like a super mom, I think really inspired me to like also be really hardworking.
Mm-hmm.
And then the chiquita, like I would sometimes go and work with my dad on the roofs. Like he would have like little side jobs. Y yo me subía with him on the roofs and my dad would be like, te vas a caer. And I would try to, and he would give me like money and stuff. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started like, or I would mow the lawn. I was always like very like, I can do it. Like, yeah, my dad did the chiquita. He would always tell me like, you're going to be very like hardworking. I think I got that from both my parents, but also
Mm-hmm.
from seeing my mom, like being like, oh, okay. Like, women can do it too.
If you weren't in this career, what career would you like to explore?
You know what I really wanted to do before I got into counseling, and it could have gone both ways, is I actually wanted to be a lawyer. So I had gone to the orientation here in Fresno at the San Joaquin College of Law, I think it's called, and I really wanted to do that. And I almost decided on doing that instead of the master's program for counseling. Si tuviera todo el dinero in the world and I could just afford to go back to school, because I'm like, I don't want to go into debt with anything else. Definitely probably be to law school and just be able to have both degrees so that I could do both si quisiera.
Based on that orientation, like, is it a long process?
It's actually it's very similar to a master's program. 2 years full time. Their full time program, you cannot work. Like I don't know how they check it. No sé si they try to, but you
Yeah.
can't work. So you have to go to law school full time. And then they have a part time program that I believe is 4 years, and that's the one that I was looking at. And they allow you to work part time, but you can't work full time either. Y luego another thing that I learned is that you don't need a bachelor's to get into law school. You only need an associate, actually, at least for that law school. So it's either 2 to 4 years. Y luego after that, you take the exams for the school, and then eventually you have to take the bar exam and pass that. But yeah, it's very similar to a master's program, like as far as like years, and you have to do volunteer hours too in the law program. And
Was the cost almost the same from
no,
law
law
to
school is a little bit more expensive. I think law school for the whole 2 or 4 years, depending on what you did, was around 90 to 100.
Oh, well, for those 2 years?
Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive. Yeah.
To end the interview, I'm going to ask you some bonus questions. What advice would you give to your younger self on achieving your dreams?
The things are gonna get better. It's kind of like an emotional question, but the things are gonna get better. There was a lot of things that growing up I felt like I was like really confused about and things like that. And then with my parents' household being so chaotic, like I was always being like their therapist, like todo el tiempo. And so like I always felt like I had to deal with things by myself. As I've gotten older, and again it kind of goes back to like the coping mechanisms that haven't been always the greatest for me. Like it's something that I've had to really learn and unlearn. So for my younger self, I'd be like, it does get better. Like you do eventually figure out who you are. Like for me, my sexual identity was like one thing that I had to figure out eventually. Like I was like, oh, maybe I'm not the traditional heterosexual, like married and have kids, but figuring out what career I wanted, because like I told you, there was a time where I'm like, yo no sé.
The pressure.
Yes, and just navigating all of that, but just telling my younger self that it does get better. Your mental health gets better. The love in your life gets better. Like everything's gonna get better. Just kind of like hang in there.
What advice would you give to the people watching us?
That you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. There's so many opportunities in this world, and I wish that sometimes schools would show us more career opportunities besides like nursing and police work and like the typical ones. There's so much opportunity out there that people don't know about. If you're unsure of like what you want to do with your life, I would recommend to just really start off with one thing. Like, do you like helping people? Do you like teaching people? Do you like training people? What do you like? And then go from there and figure out like, okay, what career would I like to get into?
What would you want people to take with them in this conversation?
Just to don't give up on furthering your education, because I do feel like it pays off. Now, in the point of my life where I am now, like I feel like it's paying off. I'm making good money. Like I feel like I'm financially stable, and I feel like I love and I'm enjoying everything that I'm doing. I think education is so important. And so for anybody out there that is thinking about furthering their education, just do it and just figure out the rest later.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for taking your time to interview with me. It really means a lot, and I know this conversation will help others continue fighting on and making their dreams come true, porque si se puede. Thank you for watching and listening to this podcast. I'll see you guys on the next one.